Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise, stack up the research, and deliver the concentrated insight you need. Today, we're undertaking a unique mission.
We really are.
We aren't here to discuss quarterly earnings or market valuation. Our target is, well, it's a lot more ambitious.
Oh, yeah. We are going inside the head of one of the world's most polarizing and successful operators, Elon Musk.
Right, to deconstruct the actual cognitive architecture he uses.
That's it. For you, the learner, this isn't about a business biography. This is about understanding a repeatable, physics-based system of logic.
An operating manual, almost.
Exactly, an operating manual that he applies with, unwavering rigor across industries that have nothing to do with each other. Space, cars, AI.
And now social media. We've all been just inundated by the headlines, right? The drama, the volatility, we want to bypass all of that. Our source material lays out a blueprint for what it calls a unified cognitive architecture.
And it's designed specifically to defeat two massive inhibitors of innovation. First, organizational inertia. That standard corporate acceptance of this is how we do it.
A killer of all good ideas.
Right. And second, the inherent cognitive biases that most of us use for day-to-day problem solving.
The whole point of this system is to reject incrementalism. It's not about making something 1% better.
No, it's built to ensure that before a single dollar is spent, before a single part is designed, the underlying assumptions are, well, they're ruthlessly interrogated.
So if you really want to understand how he tackles problems that span physics, finance, and human psychology,
like becoming a multiplanetary species or solving the human communication bandwidth problem,
you have to understand this framework.
You do.
And we're going to lay out that framework in a linear logical path for you. We'll start with the philosophy, which is first principles thinking. Then we'll move to the preparation phase, the semantic tree.
After that, the quantitative filter, the idiot index,
which is a fantastic name. And finally, we'll get to execution, using the strict, non-negotiable 5-step protocol he calls the algorithm.
It really is the closest thing we have to an intellectual cheat code for radical ambition.
Okay, let's start at the absolute foundation then. The core methodology that determines how a problem is even viewed in the first place. First principles thinking.
Right. And to grasp why this is so radical, you have to appreciate how most of us, most of the time, reason about things.
We use analogy.
We rely on analogy. It's our default setting. And honestly, it's fast and effective for most daily tasks. It just means taking an existing solution, a path that's already been paved by others, and making slight incremental improvements.
The source material calls it cognitively cheap.
And it is. It's easy because you don't have to reevaluate the foundational assumptions. You just iterate on the current best practices.
It's the path of least resistance, isn't it? If you're a 19th century inventor looking at transportation and you see a bicycle is the best thing out there,
you focus on refining the bicycle.
Exactly. You make the tires thinner, the frame lighter, the handlebars more ergonomic. But your innovation it's bounded by that historical precedent.
You never build a car.
You never build the car. Your improvements stay continuous, never radical.
So first principles thinking is the intellectual sledgehammer that just shatters those boundaries. It demands that you deconstruct any problem, any product, any process.
All the way down.
All the way down to its most basic, undeniable components. The laws of physics and raw truths, as the source puts it. And then you rebuild a solution from scratch, informed only by those elements.
So you're bounded only by what physics allows.
That's it. Not by what your competitors charge or what history dictates.
And this is where the rubber meets the road. The defining core example here is the cost of a rocket. This moment isn't just an interesting anecdote. It's the fundamental philosophical insight that actually birthed SpaceX.
It really is. When Musk first researched the aerospace industry, he wasn't trying to build a better version of an existing rocket. He was just trying to figure out how to cut the cost of launching a small payload.
And the market reality he faced was pretty stark.
It was. A single commercial launch vehicle, an expendable rocket, cost around $65 million. An analogical thinker just accepts that number. It's a business reality.
But the first principles approach mandates the question, why? Not, how can I make my $65 million rocket $64 million?
No, the question is, what is a rocket physically made of?
And that deconstruction phase, what did it reveal?
It revealed that the materials themselves, The aerospace-grade aluminum alloys, the titanium, copper, carbon fiber composites.
It's actual stuff.
The actual stuff. When you price it all at commodity market value, it totaled only about $1.3 million.
Right, so the raw material cost was just 2% of the final price tag.
2%.
A 98% gap. That's not a margin. It's a colossal inefficiency.
Yeah.
What does that gap even represent, if not the physical difficulty?
That 98% represents the historical baggage of the entire aerospace industry. It's the cost of decades of fixed facility overhead, multi-layered bureaucracy, legacy vendor lock-in.
And slow, cautious production methods.
Exactly. Manual, high-precision, low-volume assembly. The profound conclusion was that the astronomical cost was not dictated by the laws of physics. It was a failure of industrial engineering and organizational design.
It was human inertia, not rocket science, driving the price.
That was the insight.
So he made the philosophical pivot. He rejected the traditional form, the belief that a rocket must be expensive, and focused entirely on the function.
The function being launch payloads to orbit. And he decided they had to build the entire system from the ground up to eliminate that 98% gap.
Which meant reinventing everything. Manufacturing, supply chain, design, all at the same time.
And that's why the methodology is so powerful. It moves from accepting historical constraints to creating these radical new possibilities. You can immediately say, okay, if I know the function and I know the materials are cheap, then I can rebuild the process in a completely different way.
There's a great metaphor in the analysis to visualize this deconstruction and reconstruction, the snowmobile metaphor.
It's a perfect way to grasp the nonlinear jump. If your goal is efficient travel over snow, an analogical thinker. Well, they just optimize the sled.
Right, a better sled.
A better sled. The first principles thinker asks, what are the core functions I need? I need power.
Okay, the motor of a boat.
I need traction.
The treads of a tank.
And I need direction, the handlebars of a bicycle. By combining those deconstructed fundamental functions from completely unrelated machines, you create an entirely new utility, the snowmobile.
The structure forces you to bypass iteration to achieve invention.
That's it. It fundamentally reframes what is even possible. It's no longer about competing against a rival company. It's about competing against the laws of physics and the efficiency of material usage.
So if that's the philosophical grounding reject analogy, insist on first principles, the immediate practical question is, how do you equip yourself to even ask those fundamental questions?
Right. Radical innovation isn't just guesswork.
No, it's preceded by intensive, often invisible technical preparation. The deep dive into the source material is absolutely non-negotiable.
Absolutely. The force analysis really highlights that the success of the first principles approach is entirely dependent on having a mastery of the subject matter that rivals or even exceeds the incumbent industry experts.
And this learning phase, it uses two highly structured mechanisms. The first is what he calls the semantic tree framework.
The knowledge is a tree analogy is perfect. I think we've all been in situations where we feel like we're just collecting random facts without any context. And that's the exact failure mode the semantic tree is designed to prevent. Knowledge is structured like a tree. You have to master the trunk and big branches, the foundational principles, the physics, the core math, the fundamental economics.
Before you get to the leaves.
Before you even think about the leaves, which are the minute details, the isolated facts, the trivia.
Why is that distinction so critical, though?
Because if that foundational trunk isn't robust, if you don't understand the basic laws of thermodynamics or fluid dynamics in a rocket context, then new, complex, detailed information has nothing reliable to stick to.
You just get a fragmented understanding.
Fragmented understanding, poor retention, and critically, you lack physical intuition. You might know isolated facts, but you can't connect the dots to lead a radical redesign. You become an amateur who's just arguing facts, not a master applying principles.
And the illustration of this in the rocket world is, well, it's frankly staggering. This is true saturation.
Oh, yes. When he decided to seriously pursue building rockets, his approach was total immersion. This involved a massive, targeted absorption of specialized literature. The analysis notes he went beyond just reading. He aimed for memorization of incredibly dense, complex academic textbooks.
What kind of books are we talking about?
Things like rocket propulsion elements and fundamentals of astrodynamics. These are not airport thrillers. This is graduate-level engineering stuff.
And the goal wasn't just academic appreciation, I assume?
No, not at all. The goal was always application first. By absorbing this deep-level knowledge, he equipped himself with the high-resolution technical vocabulary and Crucially, the physical intuition needed to not just participate in, but to challenge and lead high-level engineering discussions.
So he could design the initial systems himself and stress test assumptions against physical reality, not just what the market was doing.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second mechanism, moving beyond theory. Targeted probing or expert validation.
Okay, so if the reading built the trunk.
The probing polishes the branches. This is the stress testing phase. The process involves identifying the most brilliant, proven minds in a specific field propulsion, satellite systems, neuroanatomy, whatever, and then downloading their expertise.
This isn't just a general chat, though, is it?
No, it's highly focused, repetitive questioning.
And what are they probing for? Are they just asking the experts to confirm what the textbook says?
They're validating the first principles that they've already identified through the reading. They want to move beyond the theory to capture the real-world, practical insights, the exceptions, the institutional knowledge that isn't written down in a book.
So it's about discovering the limitations the experts have run into and seeing if the theory holds up against 10 years of field failures.
Exactly. He's identifying the boundaries of what is known and what is possible.
So the knowledge cycle moves from theoretical reading to expert stress testing and then immediately to functional application.
Correct. The learning cycle is only complete when physical possibility is proven. The analysis emphasizes that the final non-negotiable step is moving immediately from reading and questioning to building a small-scale hardware model, a prototype.
Whether it's a micro-rocket in the early SpaceX days or prototyping electrode materials for Neuralink.
The technical mastery is cemented through building. This is the mechanism by which he rapidly achieves expertise in fields that usually require decades of specialized training.
It sounds incredibly intense, reading the entire professional library, grilling the masters, and then trying to build the physical thing the next day.
That intensity is the key differentiator. It ensures the insights from first principles are technically informed, validated by experts, and immediately tested against physical reality. It prevents the whole framework from being derailed by some theoretical flaw.
Okay, so once the deep dive and the first principles formulation are complete, the idea has to pass a critical, quantitative, and I'd say culturally challenging filter. This is how effort gets prioritized, and it determines if an idea is even worth an aggressive redesign. This is the wonderfully blunt metric known as the idiot index.
It's a truly brilliant metric, if a little terrifying, because of its simplicity and its unforgiving nature.
Right.
The index is designed to quantitatively expose operational inefficiency and technological waste. The formula is direct. Idiot index equals the total cost of the finished component divided by the cost of the basic raw materials.
And let's address the blunt name. What's the philosophy behind calling it the idiot index?
The term is provocative on purpose. If the ratio is high, the philosophy is simple. The process or the design, not necessarily the engineer, is fundamentally stupid. It's an artifact of legacy thinking or organizational flab.
So a high index is a glaring signal to management.
It's an immediate flashing red light that says,
Yeah.
This is where structural, ground-up innovation is most needed. It indicates that manufacturing is inefficient, the design is too complex, or the supply chain is extracting way too much profit.
It weaponizes inefficiency into a metric that forces radical change. Let's revisit the examples, starting with that early rocket analysis.
We established that a $65 million finished rocket versus $1.3 million in material value. That results in an idiot index of 50.0. 50. That level of inefficiency told them they couldn't survive by just tweaking the status quo. That index of 50.0 was the core justification for the existential risk of forming SpaceX to build everything in-house.
That 98% gap became their competitive advantage.
Exactly. But it's one thing to see that globally. It's another to apply it to an established mass market industry like automotive batteries.
That shows the universality of the index, doesn't it?
It does. Traditionally, a finished assembled battery pack costs manufacturers around $600 per kilowatt hour. Yet the cost of the raw cathode, anode, and electrolyte materials was hovering around $80 per kilowatt hour.
So that gives you an index of 7.5.
7.5, which for high-volume manufacturing is still enormous.
So in the context of mass production, what does a 7.5 index even mean?
It signaled inefficiency not just in the chemistry, but in the assembly, the logistics, the scaling. It meant massive waste in connecting cells, housing them, cooling them, moving them through the supply chain.
And that index became the driving force behind the gigafactory.
The entire gigafactory concept. localizing the supply chain, designing the battery pack as a structural component of the car, and drastically optimizing the cell-to-pack ratio to squeeze out every one of those inefficiencies.
And this isn't just a high-level theory. We have an example of this driving granular day-to-day engineering decisions on the Raptor engine, the heart of Starship.
This is maybe the most visceral example. During Raptor development, a key engine component was found to cost $13,000 to produce.
Okay.
The engineering team, using the index, checked the cost of the raw base steel used to make it. Only $200.
So that's an idiot index of 65.0.
65. The number itself just screams, stop what you were doing.
The engineers didn't need a PowerPoint on overhead. They just saw the number 65.
Exactly. The index forced them to immediately question the premium. They discovered the complexity came from over-engineering. The part was being made using slow, expensive, high-precision methods like specialized machining.
So what do?
By applying lessons from the high-volume, cost-conscious auto industry, they decided to radically simplify the design, shift the process from machining to cheaper, faster stamped steel. Their immediate aggressive goal was an 80% cost reduction.
Driven purely by the index pointing out the waste.
Really?
A shift from a $13,000 part to a target of under $3,000. That shows the power of the framework. But I have to ask, doesn't this aggressive focus on raw material cost lead to some short-sightedness? Surely sometimes a high index is justified because of specialized labor or necessary quality control.
That's the critical challenge built into the framework. The system acknowledges that some index is unavoidable, especially in aerospace. But the culture dictates that you must passionately defend why that high index has to exist.
The default is to reduce it.
The default bias is to reduce it, forcing engineers to prove that the expense is tied to an unavoidable law of physics, not just a historical practice. They're basically betting that most high indices are just human inertia. And so far, that bet has paid off.
It even drove large, high-level material decisions, which just flies in the face of traditional aerospace. I'm thinking of the famous pivot from carbon fiber to stainless steel for Starship.
That material shift was a massive strategic application of the idiot index. Carbon fiber is incredibly light and strong. It adheres to the traditional aerospace goal of minimum mass.
But it's expensive.
But carbon fiber is inherently expensive as a raw commodity. Stainless steel, especially the alloys they use, has a far lower base commodity cost. By making that shift, they fundamentally lower the idiot index of the entire vehicle.
So they decided the cost saving outweighed the weight penalty.
Right, because they could then compensate for the extra weight with other first principle solutions, like optimizing the fuel mix and thrust. They prioritize lowering the cost base over the traditional obsession with lightness.
It's a complete inversion of priorities. And it all comes back to a ruthless mathematical question. Are you an idiot? Or is this cost physically necessary?
So once an idea passes the philosophical test of first principles and the economic filter of the idiot index, we move from ideation to execution.
And this is where the algorithm takes over. A rigorous, linear, 5-step protocol. It's the operating procedure for all projects, from constructing Starbase to restructuring X.
And that linearity is non-negotiable. This is the most critical learning moment for anyone listening. You have to follow the steps in this specific order.
Why is that so important?
The source analysis stresses that the most common and most dangerous failure point in engineering is optimizing something that should not exist. Skipping steps just accelerates you toward a bad outcome.
Okay, let's break down step 1, which sets the foundation. Make your requirements less dumb.
This is the intellectual humility phase. Before you start building anything, you must ruthlessly question every single requirement, regardless of where it came from.
And this is a countermeasure against organizational risk.
A crucial one. Musk notes that requirements imposed by smart people are actually the most dangerous.
Why is that?
Because subordinates are far less likely to challenge an arbitrary constraint if it comes from a respected expert or a senior executive.
So if the requirement is the car must have 3 distinct types of fasteners for the door panel, you have to ask why.
Exactly. Every requirement has to be justified by physics, regulation, or proven functionality. And the accountability mechanism is key. Every requirement must be attached to a specific person's name.
Not a department.
Not a department like safety or compliance. Departments can't answer why. A person can. The goal is to strip away all those just-in-case constraints that accumulate over time, but lack a fundamental physical basis.
Right.
If you can't link it to the laws of physics or a non-negotiable safety mandate, it needs to be interrogated until it's justified or eliminated.
Once requirements are justified, we move to the most radical step. Step 2. Delete the part or process.
This is the bias toward subtraction, and it has to be ruthless. The directive is to eliminate any part or process step that is not absolutely essential to the function.
This sounds like it challenges the very core of established engineering, which often defaults to adding complexity.
It does.
But isn't deleting, say, 80% of a workforce at X or deleting complex systems inherently risky? Where's the margin for error in a system that demands subtraction?
The margin for error is in the intellectual prep work of steps 1 and 2. By defining the necessary requirements in step 1, you know exactly what is functionally required. Anything else is just overhead.
And Musk has a metric for this.
A chilling one. He says if you aren't forced to add things back in at least 10% of the time, you are not deleting enough. You have to deliberately overshoot the boundary of elimination to ensure you reach maximum simplicity.
The analysis argues that the deleted part is the superior part.
It is the perfect part. It cannot fail, it adds no weight, it costs nothing, requires no maintenance, and takes up no space. The example they cite is the Starlink launches.
Right, the deployment system.
They deleted the entire complex, costly stage separation system, all the pneumatic or pyrotechnic mechanisms needed to push the satellites away. Instead, they realized that by using the rocket's gentle rotation, they could generate enough centrifugal force to deploy the satellites with zero dedicated hardware.
That is step 2 perfection.
It is.
Okay, now that we've eliminated everything that isn't essential, we finally get to step 3. Simplify and optimize.
And this is the key linearity rule. You only refine what remains after the deletion phase. You streamline the design for maximum efficiency, elegance, and low cost. You're just improving the necessary components.
And the source warns about the common error of a smart engineer,
Which is applying their immense intellectual horsepower to optimize the weight or complexity of a part that should have been eliminated entirely in step 2.
If you spend 3 months making a slightly lighter bracket that was never needed in the first place.
You've engaged in globally suboptimal activity, you wasted 3 months.
This step is the final refinement before scaling. And step 4 is where speed comes in. Accelerate cycle time.
Now that the design direction is validated, simple and lean, you focus on speed and cadence, driven by a maniacal sense of urgency.
So more production, more testing.
Exactly. This is why SpaceX pushes rapid, iterative flight tests. Failures become learning opportunities that happen quickly, not decades apart.
But again, there's a crucial caveat to this acceleration.
A huge one. Speed must only be introduced after the direction is proven correct, by following steps 1 through 3. If you skip the requirements check and the deletion phase just to run faster.
You're digging your own grave faster.
Exactly. You just accelerate the iteration of a fundamentally bad or overly complex design, wasting resources at an exponential rate. Speed is a multiplier. If you multiply 0 effectiveness, you still get 0.
And finally, the step that most people try to start with. Step 5, automate.
Automation is the absolute last step, the culmination. It should never ever be the first.
And he learned this the hard way.
He did, which gives him a lot of credibility when enforcing this rule. We all remember the automation hell of the Tesla Model 3 production line. He tried to automate processes that were poorly designed, complex, and should have been simplified or removed in earlier steps.
Machines fail catastrophically when asked to manage human-level complexity.
But they're great at repeating simple, flawless tasks.
So proper automation only happens when the process is finalized, lean, and simple enough for machines. You have to make the process simple for a human before you try to make it simple for a robot.
Precisely. If the algorithm is a drill, step 5 is where you push the button to make it go fast and repeat the action millions of times, but only after you've verified the bit is sharp and pointing in the right direction.
So this linear algorithm and the underlying first principles methodology, they're intellectually demanding. To make them work consistently, you need an organizational culture that supports this extreme efficiency, one with zero tolerance for internal friction based on hierarchy.
That's the hardcore culture element. It's a complete rejection of consensus-driven corporate safety. It's rooted instead in extreme technical accountability and a ruthless chief engineer mandate.
What does that mandate specifically require of the leadership?
Well, Musk acts as the ultimate chief engineer, signing off on most major design decisions. But more fundamentally, he demands that technical managers, not just the junior staff, must spend at least 20% of their time actively engaged in hands-on technical tasks.
That prevents management from becoming detached strategists.
Right. The rule is you cannot be a general who can't use a sword. You have to maintain the technical fluency and physical intuition to genuinely understand the engineering challenges your team faces. Otherwise, you can't accurately challenge the requirements back in step 1.
And this technical mandate supports the meritocracy of ideas? How does that translate into daily interaction?
It translates into a demanding and, let's be honest, at times, an adversarial environment. The culture actively deems camaraderie as dangerous. If it means avoiding challenging a flawed idea just to maintain social harmony or defer to seniority.
So the environment is engineered to encourage experts to be passionately defending their position.
And bashing against each other's ideas to refine the product. It's about ensuring that technical truth wins out over social comfort or internal politics.
That sounds culturally exhausting, but necessary to weed out bad ideas quickly. What's the system's official view on failure, then?
The attitude toward error is pragmatic and fast. It's okay to be wrong, just don't be confident and wrong.
So the mistake isn't the error itself.
No, that's expected in rapid iteration. The flaw is believing in a concept so strongly that you refuse to acknowledge physical or engineering realities when they are presented to you. It's a culture designed to force quick, public acknowledgement of flaws.
Another critical element of this engineering culture is the rejection of silos. The idea that every person has to act as a chief engineer for the entire system, not just their little component.
This is a direct countermeasure against corporate complexity. It prevents what they call local optimizations that are globally suboptimal.
The classic example being the engineer who makes their engine component lighter.
But in doing so, complicates the surrounding structure or maintenance, resulting in a dramatically increased overall cost or delay. Everyone has to care about the entire mission, whether it's the structural integrity of Starship or the overall platform stability of X. They have to understand the ripple effect of their local change on the global system.
And we have a perfect recent case study of applying this entire framework, first principles, the idiot index, the algorithm, to a purely software and human capital domain. The restructuring of X, formerly Twitter.
It is a textbook application of the framework to an acquired, mature system. The preparation phase involved a deep analysis of the platform's core infrastructure and its functional role. The first principles question was, what is this service, fundamentally?
And the answer was a digital town square.
A digital town square for real-time information exchange, but one saddled with immense organizational overhead.
And then immediately to step 2 of the algorithm, delete the part or process.
Which led to the drastic reduction of the workforce, reportedly by around 80%. The argument, derived from first principles and the idiot index applied to human capital, was that a mature, hyperscale digital infrastructure should run with an extremely lean, automated high-output team.
So the previous 80%, in his view, was just bureaucratic overhead.
Redundant functions and systems that could be deleted or automated. It was a massive idiot index on human processes.
And the entire restructuring involved fundamental first principles transitions away from the traditional social media models.
You saw structural innovation based on core functions. The revenue model shifted from volatile advertisement-based revenue, which dictated policy dependence on brand safety, to a recurring subscription model, Twitter Blue, to ensure platform autonomy.
Content moderation was another big one.
A deeply siloed, centralized, and often criticized function was replaced by community notes, a decentralized, crowdsourced truth-checking system rooted in the belief that many eyes are better than a few centralized gatekeepers.
And the transparency element, open sourcing the recommendation algorithm on GitHub.
That's a pure Step 3 optimization mandate. Once you delete the unnecessary proprietary complexity, you open the system up for collective refinement. Musk viewed the whole rapid, highly controversial transition as an enshittification speedrun.
The goal being to rapidly strip away the legacy overhead and transfer that value back to the end user.
By transforming X into an integrated everything app, something like WeChat in Asia, integrating payments and communications into a single high-bandwidth interface.
Before we move to the final philosophy, we have to mention the sidebar case study, the origin of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
It's a powerful micro-application.
It shows the universality of the framework, even for what seems like a political side quest.
It really does. It started with identifying a core macro problem, the national debt spiral, where interest payments were starting to exceed massive budgets like defense. This led to the first principles question: what is the simplest, most fundamental way to reduce waste and debt?
And the application was immediate, algorithm step 2.
The answer was delete, delete, delete. Unnecessary departments, complex regulations, and organizational redundancy. The source analysis points out that the naming DOGE, echoing the meme, was not arbitrary.
Yeah.
It was a deliberate Step 3 optimization of communication, using popular culture to build public interest around an otherwise dry, politically charged topic like government efficiency, maximizing the idea's cultural penetration. The framework is universal, even for policy critique.
We've covered the entire cognitive system, the how of thinking, preparation, filtering, and execution. But for a framework this intense and unrelenting, there has to be a profound philosophical why driving the ambition across so many high-risk ventures.
At the deepest level, the why is rooted in a profound philosophical belief about human existence. He views human consciousness as a small candle in a vast darkness.
A candle that required 4.5 billion years of delicate, improbable evolution to emerge.
Exactly. And he's driven by curiosity and a fundamental desire to expand the scope and scale of consciousness to better understand the nature of the universe before that candle inevitably blinks out.
That sense of scale and fragility links directly to the concept of great filters, the existential threats that could extinguish humanity.
Precisely. This philosophical urgency dictates the long-term existential goals of his companies. Colonizing Mars via SpaceX is the direct physical response to the Great Filter theory.
Ensuring the long-term survival and distribution of consciousness by making life multiplanetary.
Right. And the source notes that this mission is heavily influenced by Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, which is all about the preservation of knowledge and culture during periods of societal collapse.
And his other major ventures, Optimus and XAI, they also fit into this grand strategy for securing and expanding consciousness.
They do. Optimus and robotics are aimed at creating an abundance economy. By using advanced AI and humanoid robotics, the goal is to eliminate scarcity and physical drudgery,
freeing up human effort to focus entirely on high-level cognitive and creative problems.
right, expanding the scope of what we can achieve. And XAI, driven by deep dives into physics and information theory, is the pure search for truth. Its first principles applied to AI to understand the fundamental why and mechanisms of the universe itself.
But the ultimate, most direct expression of this drive to expand consciousness has to be Neuralink,
Oh, absolutely.
which tackles what he calls the bandwidth problem, our current biological bottleneck.
This is a profoundly philosophical engineering challenge. Musk argues that human communication, our primary methods of speech and typing, is agonizingly slow.
Operating at less than 1 bit per second.
Less than 1 bit per second and extremely lossy. I mean, just think of how much thought you have to compress and distort to get it into a single sentence. We're taking these incredibly complex thoughts, or what he calls idea templates, and squashing them into clumsy linear language, losing most of the fidelity in the process.
So Neuralink is designed to solve this intrinsic biological limitation, to upgrade the human interface.
The immediate technical preparation involves solving the hermetic barrier, protecting sensitive electronics from the extremely harsh, corrosive environment of the human brain. And the application path is meticulous. It follows the algorithm. Prove the technology first on critical medical applications.
Like restoring sight or mobility for paralysis patients through direct thought control.
Exactly. That proves functionality and safety. But the long-term objective is far, far grander than medical restoration.
What's the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal is achieving a megabit transfer rate. That's 1,000,000 times faster than our current communication bottleneck. This speed would allow for the seamless, lossless exchange of raw idea templates.
Transferring the core thought structure without compressing it into language.
Yes. And this is crucial for preventing what he sees as the inevitable AI-human divergence, where human intellect, bottlenecked by slow communication, gets left behind by rapidly advancing digital intelligence.
So this ability to exchange raw idea templates, it would fundamentally change human collaboration and evolution. It's digital symbiosis.
Driven by a deep dissatisfaction with our current biologically limited communication rate. The entire architecture, from the idiot index on a piece of steel to a neural thread network, is unified by the goal of expanding that small candle.
Everything connects.
Everything connects. If you look at the goals making life, multiplanetary, eliminating scarcity, achieving high bandwidth consciousness, they are all unified by a single first principles belief. The most valuable thing in the universe is expanded consciousness, and every system must be designed to maximize its survival and scope.
What a rigorous integrated system. If we pull back and just summarize this unified cognitive architecture for you, the listener.
The journey begins with preparation. The exhaustive semantic tree deep dive to build foundational knowledge, followed by the quantitative stress test of the idiot index to identify where the maximum inefficiency lies.
Then ideation is driven by first principles thinking, demanding you abandon historical analogy.
And execution is governed by the algorithm, a linear, non-negotiable process that dictates ruthlessly deleting waste in step 2 before you even attempt optimization in step 3 or automation in step 5.
And all of this is governed by that philosophical duty to protect and expand the candle of consciousness in the face of great filters.
That's the whole system.
The genius for you, the learner, is the universality of this framework. You don't need a starship factory to apply this methodology. You can apply the idiot index to your internal processes, asking, is the finished cost of this project justified by the raw necessity? And you can apply the 5 steps of the algorithm to your next work or personal project, starting by asking step 1, are these requirements fundamentally necessary? And step 2, what can I ruthlessly and riskily delete?
And that leads us to a final provocative thought, drawing on one of the influences cited in the analysis, Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Right.
which taught him that framing the right question is often more important than finding the answer. If that's true, and the ultimate technical goal of Neuralink is to achieve seamless idea template transfer via a megabit bandwidth, we have to consider this.
What core world-changing questions are we as a species currently failing to even formulate or ask ourselves because our thoughts are bottlenecked and corrupted by our slow, less than a 1 bit per second communication rate?
What kind of civilization do we become when those raw idea templates are finally instantaneously realized and shared?